And I think that one of the main shifts that I've made is actually just to become much more self-confident, much less reliant on what somebody else thinks or feels about the business, and obviously taking on all of the advice. But really, when you know that you've got all of those pillars ticked and that we were speaking about, you should be confident in yourself, and you should be confident in your ability. And I think for a long time I wasn't. I was very unconfident in my own ability. I felt very much an imposter syndrome of being here, being in this space, being in a male-dominated industry, all of those things. And I think you've just got to put them to one side, and you've got to realize that you are allowed to hold space in that room. You should be sitting where you're sitting. You've got every right to be here, there, as much as anyone else.
Welcome to Women Disrupting Tech. My name is Dirk-Jan Hupkes, and on this podcast I give the women who work in tech the platform they need to inspire and empower each other. Join me on a journey into the world of entrepreneurship, funding, biases and role models to discover the strategies for success in the tech industry. In other words, how women can disrupt tech. Are you ready to listen? Hey, welcome back to Women Disrupting Tech, and thank you for listening to episode 90. When Victoria Lawson set out to build another wholesale CRM, she thought she was solving a major industry problem. But then she started talking to suppliers, and she realized that their biggest problem wasn't managing relationships. It was their sales staff drowning in manual, error-prone processes that slowed everything down. That insight led her to make a bold pivot. Instead of building another all-singing, all-dancing CRM, she focused on solving that one big, painful problem really well. And that's how she started building Wholepal. Wholepal is an AI-driven platform that eliminates manual data entry and therefore helps supply chains in fast-moving consumer goods run faster, smoother, and with fewer costly mistakes. What makes our conversation special is the way mindset shaped Victoria's journey as a solo founder. She had to build confidence in her own ability and become less reliant on what others think about her and her business. And Victoria shares how shifting her mindset has given her an edge in conversations with investors. With that, let's get started. So please welcome to Women Disrupting Tech, Victoria Lawson. Hey Victoria, good afternoon. Welcome to Women Disrupting Tech. Thank you for being my guest. First question I always ask is how you got into your current job or current position, and the floor is yours.
Amazing. Well, good afternoon, and thank you very much for having me. How did I get into my current position? And a bit of a background is an interesting one. I actually grew up riding and looking after horses. Up until I was probably early 20s, that was all I wanted to do with my life. And then I essentially realised that I couldn't muck out stables for £2.50 an hour when I was in my 40s or 50s. So decided that going to university was a good idea, and went to a university in Oxford. I went to Oxford Brookes. And I sort of fell into business. It was a course that they essentially chose for me to keep it fairly broad. After university, I had a brief placement with a company that was SaaS and web development. So I did actually learn a bit of coding. So I sort of started to develop an interest in tech, I suppose. And I almost accidentally fell into FMCG. I wanted to move to London, and I became an account manager for a coconut water brand in London, which was really where I stayed, not at the coconut water brand, but I developed a passion for the wholesale industry, the FMCG industry, which is sort of fast-moving consumer goods, so working for food and beverage brands and in account management for those brands.
And why did you think it was interesting, that particular area?
So for me, it was interesting because the brands I found very interesting themselves. So obviously, Challenger food and beverage brands are. They're fun, they're exciting, they're innovative, they're doing something that's usually quite disruptive, and the teams are quite fun. There was lots of young people, particularly in my role in wholesale account management. It was very, very relationship focused. So you were building relationships and you were staying in roles, and you would take that relationship to your next role as well. So you would get to know wholesale buyers, for example, for a long time and during your whole career as well. So I actually started up a small consultancy a few years ago before I started Wholepal, and that was very beneficial in that sense. You know, you kind of develop this book of contacts that you have within the industry, and our focus was really helping brands sort of understand the complexities within the supply chain of FMCG. It can be quite a complex, nuanced space.
Hmm.
Especially when it's very relationship driven, because you know a lot of it is knowing the right people who to talk to, and the processes behind how it all works.
Can you give an example what makes it complex?
So the supply chain tends to be fairly complex because there's lots of different processes that happen within it. It was a bit, a way I can describe it is when I was working for the web development agency many, many years ago, I didn't understand, or I did never realize that there was a back end to websites. I just thought that the information and the images and the beautiful website was just there. I think I just thought that there was fairies that put it there.
They
And
would
the
just magically appear.
yeah, it was just magic. It was just magic. And I think that that is the way that I would describe the supply chain to people that aren't necessarily experienced in the supply chain. People will walk into a supermarket and they'll see the product there, but there will be so much that has happened in the background to get that product from manufacturer to supplier, through its branding, through its packaging, into a distribution network with wholesalers that then pass the product through another distribution network to get it into the retailer,
Hmm.
all the commercial and negotiations that happen in the middle, and agreements, and then onto the shelf. So it's very eye-opening sometimes when you understand what actually happens with the products that we're sort of buying and utilizing every day. And I suppose
Hmm.
that's where that complexity part comes.
Okay. And so now you're the founder of Wholepal. How does that fit in to the picture? How do you transition from this consultancy company that does basically supply chain management or supply chain consultancy? I think it was more. How does it get to what you're doing now as to Wholepal?
So throughout my career, and this was prevalent when I was working within brands internally and also externally as a consultant, but I was often left just completely shocked at how outdated the processes were within the supply chain. So,
Hmm.
you know, obviously you're very used to this with sort of your hand in the tech space and experience with the other founders that you've had on here. But it was essentially the understanding that there had to be a better way of operating. I was experiencing the same issues daily when a salesperson, or when me as a consultant, or internally as a brand, and all of my peers, when you begin to develop a trading relationship with a customer. So if you're working for a manufacturer and you're developing a trading relationship with its B2B customers,
Hmm.
the process within that is incredibly complex, and it often requires a lot of manual data entry into several forms.
Hmm.
Largest and most complex of those forms being an Excel sheet with product technical data, which is product sizes, product specs, palette configurations, ingredients, all of the most important information.
Hmm.
Yet every form differs in complexity and format between trading partners. So there was no way at the time to kind of, you know, copy and paste, or, you know, manage the information other than manually by a human.
Or to automate it for that matter, if I hear you correctly. It wasn't like totally, as they call it, I think, non-structured data.
Yes, yes. We're talking about unstructured product technical information and needing to put it into a different format from source. So
Hmm.
there was no other way than human handling in the middle. And I suppose, without wanting to get too detailed, what it meant, or what it means, is that a lot of people are spending a huge amount of their time on manual form filling. The data exists at source,
Hmm.
and the data just needs to be manually entered into various different forms before it's able to be ingested into the trading partner's software or back-end system for that product to become live. So it's this transfer of data that was so complex. I could never hit KPIs as a salesperson because whilst I was good at the selling part of getting a product into a retailer or a wholesaler, I was pretty much Excel illiterate. I was really, really struggling with all of the Excel sheets. And this is a common theme amongst our account managers sort of admitting that actually they find that part of the role incredibly taxing, incredibly time consuming. A lot of errors are occurring when that process
Yeah,
is
if
taking.
you're doing manual input, it's let's say not the most fun part of any job, I would say. And if it's really repetitive, then it's it gets really error prone.
Yes, exactly. Those are the issues that are faced by both the manufacturer or the supplier and its trading partners. We call the trading partners wholesalers, retailers, e-commerce
Hmm.
platforms. Wherever there's a manual handling of information, that's not only a time and efficiency drag for sales teams handling it, but also on the other side, there's still a team that is, again, handling the information manually, wasting time. And then we see something called data latency, which is essentially where data becomes almost like data Chinese whispers. It just gets handled so many times that it becomes a very different version to the original version,
Yeah.
which when you're dealing with things like pricing or nutritionals can actually be a very costly and dangerous subsequence.
Yeah, because then you get into maybe mixing up ingredients with different percentages of how it's composed in a drink or in food,
Yes.
which may have pretty bad outcomes also in health terms, I think.
Yes, it is. We see several examples of this. For example, there's Natasha's Law that was passed in the UK that's all to do with the clarity of nutritional ingredients in FMCG products or food products.
Hmm.
People having had suffered terrible sesame allergies, for example, or other allergies due to incorrect labeling.
Hmm.
So yes, it is. It can have massive, massive consequences.
So, what strikes me a bit is there's a huge need to let's say standardize, but the industry sort of why doesn't the industry then sort of not see that need?
Yeah, so this is a really interesting question. So, standardization has been something that has been advocated within the industry. However, it's not quite as simple as that, unfortunately. So, you're a supplier and you have all of your product technical data and information. One wholesaler will want to collect it will want to collect roughly the same amount of core information, but it will have 10% that is bespoke to their own operations. I think the best way to, I suppose, put that into play is if the wholesaler is transporting the products out to, say, the UAE, it will need commodity codes and export information and logistics information that is specific to the UAE. So there is no way to standardize this. This has been attempted by the industry and it did not get very far because every trading partner wants to collect 10% maybe more of different data.
So it's not the core layer of the data. It's the on top of, like, is it halal or is it kosher or is it yeah.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Yeah. So this is where we see these complexities in the data required, I think, for these trading partnerships, which is why the forms that are exchanged are so wildly different in terms of complexity and elements. The capture elements that they're looking for are very different because each business operates differently and therefore it has only been managed by human manual process up until now.
So and how does Wholepal then solve this problem?
So with Wholepal, what we've built is an AI model that essentially suppliers can upload their information from source. So they can upload any format of documentation that they store this information on, their product technical information or product specs. They can upload it in a PDF, Word, or Excel, and our very highly trained industry specific AI will identify and read and strip out all of the data within it It will then organize the data and store it on the platform for a supplier to validate. And then once that is done, we know that that data is there accurate. It's gone through our AI, it's gone through a human verification process.
Mm-hmm.
And instead of form filling, when a trading partner wants to connect with that manufacturer or supplier and list their products, we're introducing something called Click to Connect, which is the instant digital transfer of the data from Wholepal into their backend systems or ERPs via an API. So we see this removal of the need for human handling of the data in the middle. The data can flow directly with the help of AI and in the middle, directly from business to business.
And it's verified twice, both by an AI algorithm and then also by human eyes.
Yeah.
We know, well, we have a pretty good chance that it's actually correct, but it doesn't get changed anymore. So, do I understand in terms of uploading this in? Let's say I'm a wholesaler and I'm looking for this data. I can just say, okay, I need click these things, and then it press download, and it will download all the specs.
It doesn't just download the specs, it will send that product information directly into your backend system or ERP. So yes, essentially yes, and it will download it directly into your ERP. So there's no need for having your team manually handle that information anymore, and the data latency that comes with that.
Okay. And how does this work in terms of a business model then?
So
Do I pay per download per wholesaler that I, or do I have a standard license as a wholesaler that I can just use all the data in your inside Wholepal?
at the moment, it's a standard licensing structure. It might be that with more users on the platform, we pivot to a more download or usage based model. But at the moment, we've tried to keep things as straightforward as we possibly can do for both parties. Yeah.
Do you then also charge the supplier?
Yes, so the supplier is charged and the trading partner is charged. They're very different commercial agreements, obviously, and it depends how much access they're having to the network or to the rest of the network.
Mm-hmm.
If a wholesaler, for example, or retailer has chosen Wholepal as a mandatory onboarding tool to automate, product listings, essentially, then that would look very different for the supplier commercially than if the supplier was using the platform to access all of the wholesalers.
Yeah. Yeah, because then in the last case, it would be more of a push as
Yes.
part of a distribution strategy, whereas for the wholesaler, it's much more a data, let's say, data quality play
Yes.
also.
Yes. Definitely. Definitely.
Out of curiosity, how do you sell this to people? What is what are the points that you or the buttons that you push?
And so for manufacturers or suppliers, the sales process is fairly simple. It's they're already so aware of the headache inefficiency that their team is experiencing. So
Mm-hmm.
they're very, very aware um, of the inefficiencies that are currently occurring and how much time, and relating that to missed opportunity as well for that sales team.
Mm-hmm.
And there is also a reduction, obviously, of the fines that they would traditionally receive for inaccurate data
Mm-hmm.
and any mishaps that happen along the supply chain that are costly due to inaccurate data. For example, a lorry load of goods being rejected at goods in
Mm-hmm.
because the barcodes are incorrect. On the wholesaler side of things, again, the headache is very much more known, and it's more around data accuracy. They want to be faster to respond to trends and not having paperwork filled out traditionally. Removing the traditional process and replacing with Wholepal's AI cuts what would have been a 12-week document listing time
Mm-hmm.
down to instant. It's just the manufacturer's lead time that is the time that it takes for those products to enter that warehouse.
Okay.
See
Yeah.
them becoming much more reactive to trends, for example, and forecasting more efficiently.
Can you then also do market research with it?
At the moment, market research is yes, we would do market research in the sense of more of a networking play. So on the platform, if wholesalers or retailers were searching for products that they wanted to quickly bring into their, or quickly or accurately, or both into their warehouses or systems, and then simply they can search for them on Wholepal.
Yeah. Oh, okay. That's interesting. So, did you, because you found this problem and then decided to solve it with Wholepal, was this one straight line or were there any pivots?
Yes, there have been some major pivots actually. And funnily enough, that is where our name originates from.
Mm-hmm.
So I wanted to build a platform that would essentially solve a lot of problems within the wholesale industry specifically.
Mm-hmm.
So it's going to be a large wholesale CRM account management type tool just within the wholesale industry alone. And actually, when I was validating the product, I was talking to suppliers, I was talking to customers, I was talking to wholesalers, talking to peers. It became really apparent that if we were going to solve one problem, this was the place to start. This was everybody's biggest issue, was getting fast, accurate product data out of suppliers for the wholesalers, and for suppliers, it was listing quickly
Mm-hmm.
um, with wholesalers. So we very quickly pivoted from an all singing, all dancing platform, trying to fix the world, into
Mm-hmm.
a very, very, very focused product that did one process. We focused on solving for one process and one process only. And this has been really the basis of our all of our focuses and the business's growth from here. Another pivot that we did was, in order to achieve our goal of instant digital connectivity, so click to connect, instant digital data transfer, we have to have an analogy that someone gave me a few weeks ago that I thought was brilliant, was both hands need to clap. We need to have the manufacturers and the suppliers, and we need to have the wholesalers, retailers, e-commerce, what we call trade partners, and they need to connect. A long time we were focusing on solving for both sides, building for both sides,
Oh,
and
separately.
separately building for both sides. And again, a learning that we quite quickly realized was that to build for both sides, we would run out of runway for a start, because it would take us so long to get enough critical mass of wholesalers or retailers or trade partners and suppliers on the platform for this to start having a large effect on the industry. So a strategic pivot that we made was just to focus on what can we commercialize the fastest, what can we bring customers onto the quickest, and what can we therefore
And
use.
how do you also, if I understand you correctly, how do you deliver something that serves both ends of the market at the same time?
Yes, yeah. So that's part of our pivot was, I think, realizing that we needed to separate the sides and focus purely on servicing one side very, very well, building a product that we could get into the market and we could start finding product market fit for, then focusing on the other side of the market, which is essentially what the pivot was. We've built out the supplier side of the market. They now have a tool that they can use, the AI, the data verification, the storage, and as opposed to the instant digital connection piece with wholesalers and retailers and other trade partners, because that side will take us time to generate traction on, we built a really interesting tool that allows the auto generation of instant documentation for the suppliers. So we've kept the user journey essentially the same. They're still getting the instantness of what a connection would be, only generating documentation rather than the actual sending directly into ERP systems, and commercializing that. That was our focus, and that's been pivotal for the business, because we would have run out of time and money getting the wholesaler side built, whereas we've been able to focus on delivering a really strong product on the supplier side, which we're now generating revenue from. And now we're focusing on bringing on our first pilot wholesalers to a very lean MVP version of what the wholesale side of the platform looks like, or I keep calling it wholesale because we were so wholesale focused in the start, but the trading partner side.
So who is the ultimately who benefits the most out of this? Is that the trading partners or is that the still the suppliers where you started?
It's multifaceted really. I would say they're both benefiting just in slightly different ways. With suppliers, it's all about speed and sales team efficiency.
Hmm.
We see there's a huge amount of missed opportunity when your sales team are spending up to 50% of their time on manual admin. So it's
Yeah,
about
because you can't spend time with a customer.
exactly. They can spend time selling the product and they're not having to sell it. And we've had a lot of instances where people have admitted missing listing windows because they have been pushing the paperwork off because the paperwork is that arduous and taxing. And for the wholesalers, it's around the data accuracy and the speed to products to shelf. So it's really there's very strong and clear benefits for both parties. So we've got high demand from both sides of the market.
Okay, cool. We talked a bit about runway. So I was wondering because you are in the process of fundraising also. And I was wondering about two things. A, how is it going? And B, what has been your experience as a female founder in this?
Yeah, absolutely. So I think being totally transparent, last year was challenging on the fundraising side, but that was due to technical reasons that led to a bit of a traction debt. We had run into certain issues that we were finding were holding us up in launching a product that we could sell essentially. Now that we're live and we've gained traction, things have become a lot smoother and a lot easier on the fundraising side of things. So I think as a woman, it's very easy to get discouraged by the statistics and
Hmm.
feel like you're starting from sort of the back foot, which is probably how I felt for a long time. Especially, I was very lucky and I raised my first round when I was pre product, essentially. So I kind of thought of, go off and it'll be exactly the same, and it wasn't, unfortunately. So I think what I've really learned, and any sort of messages to other founders that are raising at the moment is it is really important to step back and take a look at the bigger picture. Do you have everything your business needs to raise successfully? And it's a lot of different foundational pillars. Essentially, you need a strong product, you need solid traction, you need market validation, a capable team, a business plan, thorough DD room. There is so much that you do need to
Hmm.
have that when I was raising last year, we had a couple of those missing. And I think that was why it was so challenging. And once you get those right, you'll know because you will suddenly feel everything will be so much easier. You'll start having more doors opened on the fundraising side of things and start to see more term sheets coming through. So, yes, I think that it is very easy for a woman to get caught up in the statistics. And I feel ultimately you do need a fantastic product and idea, and just to make sure you've got all of your ducks in a row.
I was wondering what is the importance of having a good mindset in this?
That's a really, really good question. And I think that counts for an awful lot. Mindset is everything. It really, really is. And unfortunately, I think as women, we tend to fall into the category of erring on self doubt, I
Hmm.
think, than erring on the side of self confidence, where I
Yeah.
think a lot of male founders are very confident that, the foundational pillars that I would say that are necessary to raise correctly, I think, as a man who's very highly confident in themselves, they don't necessarily have to have every one of those pillars ticked.
No, they just have to exude confidence to investors that they will take that they A know and B take care of it.
Yes, yeah, exactly. And I think that there is a confidence going back to your mindset piece. I think that is it. That's really the crux of it. If you can believe in you can believe in your product. Of course you can as a founder. You've got it this far, however far you are, that you've done it. You've got getting there. But it's really about the self-belief in yourself. And I think that's a huge mindset shift that I've needed to make lately, and sort of seen huge differences as well, even just in the way I present myself to investors, for example.
Can you give an example of that?
I think a specific example would be rather than becoming nervous about an investor pitch or call, I used to get very, very nervous. And I think that one of the main shifts that I've made is actually just to become much more self confident, much less reliant on what somebody else thinks or feels about the business. And
Hmm.
obviously taking on all of the advice, but really, when you know that you've got all of those pillars ticked and that we were speaking about, you should be confident in yourself, and you should be confident in your ability. And I think for a long time I wasn't. I was very unconfident in my own ability. I felt very much an imposter syndrome of being here, being in this space, being in a male-dominated industry,
Hmm.
all of those things. And I think you've just got to put them to one side, and you've got to realize that you are allowed to hold space in that room. You should be sitting where you're sitting. You've got every right to be here, there, as much as anyone else. So yeah, I think that's probably been the biggest. I'm much more confident with investors now.
How did you do that? How did you make that change?
God, that's a really good question as well. How did I make that change? I think a lot of it was self reflection in terms of what was really going right for us last year and what was going wrong. And it was doing a lot of reflection over the Christmas period and Christmas holidays, and what do I need to do personally in order to be a better leader, a better founder, a better investment raiser. And I think I came to the conclusion that it was really self-belief that was holding me back. And I think, yes, it was a sort of self-discovery of what do I need to be the best version of a startup founder. And I think confidence is a huge, huge part of that.
Thank you for sharing. I want to move on to a different topic. You already mentioned that you have a great team. I read on the website that it's actually evenly split, 50-50 men, at least in gender terms. So, how did you build it? Did you build it like this on purpose, or was there?
No, not at all. Not at all built on purpose. There was no strategy to bringing in more women than men. It was simply that the right people were presenting themselves at the right time for the right roles, and they happened to be a woman. So, yes, I don't think that there was a particular hiring strategy necessarily essentially to create equality, but it was just the way that it happened. It was contacts through our own network that I may have worked with or our team has worked with previously. And they were just the right fit, just really fantastic people that were a perfect fit for the business.
Okay. So, how do you determine who is the right fit?
So,
And not necessarily in terms of let's say, the qualities of the person, but more in terms of personality.
yes, well, that was exactly what I was about to say is I tend not to look at CVs. I know that, we do generally look at people's CVs, but I tend to be much less driven by somebody's CV because
Hmm.
my own CV at times has been less than desirable. And I tend to focus more on their energy and their enthusiasm, because if somebody is energetic, enthusiastic, and driven, and enthusiastic about the product and what we're doing and the movement that we're making and the way we want to reshape the industry for the better, and they're really genuinely passionate about that, I think that they are a much, much better person to work for the business than somebody who may have the perfect CV but is not driven and not motivated and not enthusiastic. So it's very much an energetic match, I think, that takes place when we're hiring.
How do you gauge that?
It's very, very unquantifiable. It's totally, totally qualitative.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
I am just,
But that's why I was asking. Yeah, I'm just curious how you do it.
I think it's an intuition thing. You know those people that you get on with very, very well, and they're a match for you. And I think you just know the people that aren't. Sometimes I can spend 5 minutes on a call with somebody and know whether they're a good fit for the business or not.
Hmm.
That said, I'm probably a bit trusting, and I'm sure at some point intuition will bite me in the bum.
Hmm.
But for now, it's a driven by intuition first off, and usually sense checked by somebody who's maybe just going to make sure that there's the right skill set there and things like that. Obviously, when it's a technical position, there does have to be a skill set match.
Hmm.
But I think if you get on with somebody very well and you are raising each other's vibration in a sense that you're both getting so excited about the prospect of the product, the tool, the solution, I think that counts for so much more than anything else.
Yeah. Yeah. I think that indeed energy is a very much underestimated part of the hiring process. Does the
Mm.
person have the right energy? Do they bring the right energy also to the team?
Yes, yes, and it is. There's no way on paper that you can gauge that. it has just got to be an in-person feeling that you have when you meet somebody, and it's not necessarily all roles in the business need to be like that. You don't necessarily need somebody in a traditional operations or accounting process. They do need to be more skills driven, but most of the hires that we've made have just been fantastically enthusiastic individuals.
Who just wanted to help and get it over with the problem.
Yes, yeah, just driven in their own senses, and maybe they've got an entrepreneurial drive within them that means they might not be with the business for forever, but that's also fine. You want them to have that.
Yeah, I was wondering, how do you deal with that? Because some people are, let's say, use it as a stepping stone for good reasons.
Yes, I suppose that is something, I guess, that, startups have to deal with. I guess my thinking would be that having always been sort of entrepreneurial and having side projects and being that way inclined, I think as long as they're delivering in the role in the way that you want them to deliver in the role and the way that you've agreed that the role will be managed, I think it's absolutely fine. I think that the more driven a person is, the more likely they are going to want to go off and do their own thing eventually. And actually, can you probably help them with that in the future? I think that the archaic notion that people should stay in jobs and roles for a long time is we're probably moving away from that for good reason, because whilst obviously you don't want people to come in and use your business as a stepping stone, if they come in for a year and they perform in a year what someone long term did in 3, then there's an argument that that is also, the same, a better outcome. I don't
Yeah.
know if I really answered that question very well.
Well, it was exactly going to the point I hoped it would go to. So, do you then also hire for utility? Let me preface this a bit, because what I mean by utility, some people, if you compare to football, some people are really good wingers,
Yes.
and they are the best at being a wing defender or a wing offender.
Hmm.
And you need that skill because, let's say, you need someone with very particular AI skills, and you know that it's probably going to be project based, probably a year, maybe two, and then you have to let them go. Do you then make that hire for that specific position, or do you then still go for a more maybe generalist person who can also do AI? Provided, of course, they have the right motivation and mindset.
That's a really good question. And to be honest, our team is still small and developing, so it's not one that I have a direct answer for. Yes, I mean, ultimately, if you are looking for a certain skill set, we're very lucky in the sense we've got a very flexible team. We've got some people that are full time, lots of people that are fractional.
Hmm.
We tend to engage people that maybe have the specific skill set that we're looking for. I haven't really needed to experience that yet, and therefore I probably haven't put that much thought into that one.
Yeah, well, you did answer it to some extent because you're working with fractional people,
Yes,
which
yeah,
is to me also hiring for utility.
yes. We don't really have the luxury, I think, of a startup yet of hiring people and sort of, that are more generalist, and we are quite focused and specific, and if it is that we need a specific skill but we don't need it full time, we've been very lucky to find the right people that can do days or weeks here and there. So at the moment we haven't come a cropper on it, but again, I think that the traditional hiring structure is probably coming into a bit of a change state with the new AI tools that are coming out. We've even just recently revisited our hiring forecast or sort of foreseeable future, because with AI tools, we don't feel that we're going to need those big traditional in-house teams that maybe startups would used to have to account for before.
Hmm.
Yeah, it's a very interesting time.
Yeah. So does AI help you in your business?
AI absolutely helps us in our business. Obviously, we are a business with AI at our core, so we'd be a bit worried if we weren't using it ourselves, but it is very easy to take a step back and focus on the product rather than your own workflows. So yes, AI has definitely helped us. And you know what? It's quite a I say that and sort of terribly, it's quite a recent thing that I've gotten quite heavily involved with. I was listening to my First Millions podcast. I've never listened to one before. I was recommended it, and somebody mentioned a tool called Lindy, which I'm obviously plugging on your podcast now. But honestly, as a founder, it has changed my life, it has probably 10x'd my productivity. I was finding large tasks like redoing our investment deck that would take me weeks, take me 2 afternoons now. It is honestly incredible. In terms of productivity, speed at which I'm moving through things is hugely different. So I would say the application of AI within our team and our workflows is fairly fragmented. I would use a Lindy or an AI assistant or an AI tool. I know that our tech team will use different versions and different programs. So it is really about, I think, finding the right programs that fit maybe your silo in a business, or your skill in a business, and then also identifying the tools that work for the wider business. So how do we improve communication with each other through the use of AI, or things like that. That's probably a piece that we're needing to move on to, which is how do we take that kind of individual benefit of various fragmented programs, and how do we find a tool that is going to do the business a lot of good.
Hmm. So you said that it helped you up your productivity a lot also as a founder. Do you think that AI will make it easier for, because you're a solo founder,
Mm-hmm.
that AI will make it easier for solo founders also to, yeah, to build a business simply because the tooling is there and they can use the
Yeah.
tooling
Yeah.
for purposes that before you needed to have a team for?
Yes. Yeah. I think absolutely. I think it's going to change the landscape quite dramatically. I mean, now, you can create a whole business from scratch in a number of days with AI. A process that would take months or years before is being completed in days, hours. So it's been incredibly helpful, and I can see it creating a lot more, widening the landscape, I think, for solo founders, because you're able to cope with a much higher capacity, a much greater capacity of tasks with
Mhm.
AI as a co-pilot. It's not making decisions obviously for you. You still need to have a good team. It doesn't replace a team, but it does take a lot of pressure off of you as in terms of productivity as a solo founder.
Yeah. So, by the way, was being a solo founder a deliberate choice?
That's a really interesting question as well. I would say it is a deliberate choice. Now, I'm not saying never to a co-founder. It's not like a concrete, I am never having a co-founder. It's just a choice that I want to make. I want to try and fly the flag for solo female founders. I think we spoke about this common lack of self-belief or lack of confidence, and I think that breaking the mold and maybe showing that women can be as successful as all of the famous male solo founders that we know and hear of and are used to hearing about and coming across. I think that there is definitely a gap for solo female founders, especially within the tech space. That said, it's not to say that I don't have, members of the team are very much involved with equity, and it's not that it's me and I'm the whole business, if that makes sense.
While fundraising, was this a point of discussion for investors at all that you were a solo founder?
Not directly, no. It's not directly been a discussion. No, it hasn't actually been raised. I know that sometimes it can raise a bit of a risk flag. And again, if it ever got to the point where it was preventing us from raising, and it was a very common flag that we were being told, then I would address it. Obviously, it's the business first, but I have never been told that a reason why I've had a no or haven't raised investment is because of I've been a solo founder. I think that the good team that I have around me, it builds the confidence that is needed really in that space.
Do you think being a solo founder, you have to then put a bit more emphasis in your pitch also on the team?
That's yeah. Again, that's a difficult question. You know what? It's so hard to understand or to think about that one, because I don't know unless I can clone myself and create a male version that goes to the same investors with the same traction and the same story.
Yeah.
I can't, I don't have two comparable data sets. So I can say, Yes, I think maybe I do have to really show the team. For example, we've brought in a chairman and we've got some grey hair in the business. We've got a fantastic team of very experienced entrepreneurs and AI experts and tech experts and industry experts. And do I need to play that up any more than if I was a solo male entrepreneur? I just don't know. I can't say for sure.
I was more looking at like if you have a couple of solo founders,
Hmm.
it's sort of it's evident that everyone has skin in the game. And usually, as I understand the solo founder aversion, it's that it's not, well, it's part risk, but mostly
Hmm.
governance based. And that's where a team comes in. So
Hmm.
if you have a very good balanced team, A, you have the capabilities to go on. If the solo
Hmm.
founder, for whatever reason, decides to call it quits.
Mm.
B, there's also a balance in terms of like it's not just one person having all the say.
Yes. Yeah. 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 I think there's lots of different ways that you can look at it, and ultimately, it's not something that I'm shutting the door on completely. I think that some ways it can be a negative and it can be seen as a risk. In other ways, it can be seen as a good thing. There's no obviously likelihood of a founder falling out or co-founder fallout, or the political, I guess, road bumps that could come with one founder wanting to walk away, one founder wanting to sell, one founder wanting to, founders wanting different things for the business, which is on the flip side something that you hear of all the time in co-founding teams.
Oh, that's true. In fact, it's the most common or one of the most common reasons for startups to fail.
Yeah, exactly.
Founder team going to not be happy with each other anymore.
Yes, yeah, and I think that was part of my hesitation of wanting to bring on a co-founder is things move so quickly in startup world and business world, and actually can I bring some consistency to the business by being the core, person within it, all the time, at least for now,
Mhm.
until maybe we're a bit more stable. We've already pivoted twice, for example. What if one of my co-founders hadn't agreed with the pivot? We would have been torn apart already. So I think for now, until we become a lot more stable, and then obviously further down the line, it's definitely something that I'd be open to.
Cool. There's one question I still had here because I saw that you at one point volunteered at an orphanage in Brazil. You don't do that anymore, I think.
Yes, it's a little bit far to travel, unfortunately. I tend to stick with planting trees in the village.
Okay, but let's for a moment imagine that one of the children of the orphanage would reach out to you and tell you, I want to go into tech. What would you tell them?
So, in today's world, I think the advice that I would have for them is learn as much as you can about building and managing AI and AI models. Obviously, the landscape is moving so quickly, and I think to build a sustainable future for themselves, AI is really what they would need to go away and have a clear understanding of. If they're non technical and it's about whether or not they want an experience or they want to go into a tech product,
Hmm.
I would say find people who are forward thinkers, people that you can trust, and ultimately, again, be prepared to pivot and iterate very, very quickly. Find a problem that needs to be solved, essentially, and validate it before you're jumping into anything. But be prepared to iterate very, very quickly, because even now we're finding AI tools that are being replaced by better ones
Hmm.
within a
Yeah.
number of months or a number of years. So I think having a very, very open mind to being a lot more agile than we've ever needed to be before is really sort of tech agility. I think it would be good advice to anyone looking to come into the tech space at the moment, underpinned by definite need to just focus on AI.
Sounds like a great advice. So then I'm also looking for advice because
Mhm.
I'm on a mission to make inclusion in tech the new normal by the end of 2032. What would be your advice to make that happen?
I think that everyone probably needs to address their own subconscious biases in a way for this to happen.
Hmm.
And a good example is we've done it. We've done it in the medical industry. We've done it. We see female doctors all the time. And the word doctor no longer holds a masculine denotation. Whereas I think in the tech space, and I'm guilty of this. I'm so guilty of this. If somebody says developer, engineer, CTO, immediately the image in my mind is masculine. And I think it's about unraveling that. And actually, we're doing it because there are so many fantastic female developers and CTOs and people that are coming up that are learning the base of the coding and that side of things, that we are becoming more. It's that conditioning, the recognition of women in those roles. But I think maybe it's just addressing the kind of social, the norms that you have as soon as you hear those roles and what you think of immediately when you hear,
And really,
developer.
and then really challenging that assumption, like, okay, am
Yeah.
I really thinking of a man,
Yeah.
or could it be a woman?
Yes, exactly. Challenging that assumption, why do I think ultimately in a man, and why would I naturally maybe err towards having more trust in somebody in that role?
Yeah.
And that is absolutely not how it should be. We should be thinking of those roles as women in the same way that if I think of a doctor, solicitor, a lawyer, I would think of a woman immediately now. And we need to build that in, and it's happening, and we've shown that it can happen across other industry. So it's we're doing I think the industry is doing the right thing. I think obviously, the awareness of women in the industry and women becoming more prevalent and I suppose more involved in the tech industry and not feeling like it's just for men, and
Hmm.
feeling like it's okay to want to learn to code and things like that. It's not just a male skill set or industry anymore. I think we're definitely getting there, and obviously all the work that people like you do, and the inclusion elements of it. So yeah, it's definitely happening. I think we're not far off, but it's maybe just ingrained subconscious biases that we need to start reflecting on and questioning personally in our own minds.
Yeah. Well, that sounds like a great advice. Victoria Lawson, thank you very much for an amazing conversation. Really enjoyed it. If people want to learn more about you and about Wholepal, where would you like to send them?
So, thank you. And thank you very much for having me on the podcast. And if anyone wants to learn more about Wholepal or reach out to me, they can do so via our website, which is just wholepal.com, or on LinkedIn. I should be quite easy to find. Yeah.
And we'll
Thank
put
you.
the links in the show notes.
Yeah, I was about to say that, but I wasn't sure if that was a thing. So,
Yeah, that is a thing. So
great.
absolutely, we'll put them in there. So Victoria, thank you very much. Really enjoyed. Listeners, thank you very much for listening. And until the next episode of Women Disrupting Tech, keep being awesome. Well, that's a wrap for episode 90 of Women Disrupting Tech on how Wholesale is building the future of wholesale with Victoria Lawson. Victoria and I hope that you found our conversation as engaging as we did. And if you'd like to learn more about or connect with Victoria or Wholesale, please check out the links in the show notes. As usual, you can find the show notes at Women Disrupting Tech, all one word, .blog. On the same website, you can also become a member of the Women Disrupting Tech community. As a member, you get early access to new episodes, and you get a handwritten email with the magical moments and practical insights of each of the episodes. Plus, you'll hear when new blog posts come online. So check out the show notes for a link. When you enjoy listening to this podcast, please follow the show on Spotify, Apple, or YouTube. Following Women Disrupting Tech is a great zero-cost way to support my guests in making inclusion in tech the new normal. And if you're a regular listener, please give the show a rating or a review because that way you help other people discover the podcast. If you're a male ally and you want to help the Women Disrupting Tech make this podcast obsolete by the end of 2032, there's a simple thing you can do. Please share the podcast with friends, family, and coworkers because this way you give my guests a platform they need to make it happen. Finally, if you want to connect with me, you can reach me via dirkjan at womendisruptingtech.blog, or you can send me a DM on LinkedIn. On LinkedIn, simply type in my name and you'll find me. With that, I wish you a wonderful day. I hope to see you in the next episode. And until then, keep being awesome.